There is a truth we don't talk about enough. Most of us move through life wearing emotional armor we never meant to put on. Armor built from old hurts, silent fears, and the belief that if people really saw us, our imperfections, our hopes, we might be rejected, judged, or misunderstood. But here's the paradox: every time I hide behind that armor, we also hide from the very things we crave the most: connection, trust, belonging, and love. Vulnerability is often misunderstood as fragility, as if opening up is the same as falling apart. But the truth is far more powerful. Vulnerability is courage in its purest form. It takes strength to show up in moments where the outcome isn't guaranteed, to speak your truth when your voice shakes, to let someone see who you really are beneath the layers of protection you've built over the years. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's the decision to move forward despite it. Vulnerability is that exact decision, an inner declaration that you're willing to be seen, to be known, to be real. When you allow yourself to be vulnerable, you are choosing growth over comfort. Anyone can hide. Anyone can stay silent, pretend they don't care, or bury their emotions behind jokes, distractions, or attachment. That's the easy route. But choosing to open up, choosing to let yourself feel, choosing to express what is true inside you, those choices require bravery. Vulnerability asks you to step into spaces that feel unpredictable, to take emotional risks that may or may not give you the outcome you hope for. But every brave act humanity has ever accomplished began with that leap into the unknown. Vulnerability is the birthplace of courage, create connection, and resilience. It is courageous to admit when something hurt you. It is courageous to say, "I don't know," when you've always been expected to have answers. It is courageous to tell someone you care about without knowing if they feel the same. These moments are not signs of weakness. They are signs that your heart is open enough to participate in life honestly. Weakness avoids, weakness pretends. Courage steps into truth. And vulnerability is simply truth without disguise. Being vulnerable doesn't mean oversharing or exposing every detail of your life to everyone you meet. It means being honest with yourself and with the people who have earned your trust. It means acknowledging your emotions instead of numbing them. It means letting go of the faff out of perfection, knowing that perfection isolates while authenticity connects. When you show up vulnerably, you create room for others to show up fully too. Your courage becomes a catalyst for deeper relationships because people feel safe to share their own truths. The world often praises toughness, independence, and self-sufficiency, but true strength lies in knowing when to soften. Vulnerability is the softness that strengthens. It tells the world to try. I'm willing to feel. I'm willing to show up. There is nothing weak about any of that. In fact, it is far easier to close your heart than to open it. It is far easier to pretend than to be real. Vulnerability is a daily choice to live boldly, love deeply, and connect meaningfully. When you embrace vulnerability, you reclaim your humanity. You allow yourself to experience life fully rather than from behind a shield. You offer yourself the chance to grow, to heal, and to be seen not as a polished version of yourself, but as a real, whole, beautifully imperfect human being. That is courage. Armor is something we build slowly, often without even realizing it. It begins as protection from heartbreak, rejection, disappointment, betrayal, or shame. We learn early that people can hurt us, that trust can be broken, that vulnerability can feel dangerous. So we create emotional armor: silence instead of honesty, distance instead of connection, control instead of openness. At first, this armor feels helpful. It gives us the illusion of safety, the comfort of predictability, the belief that if we can just keep our guard high enough, nothing and no one can touch the parts of us that are tender. But over time, that same armor begins to harden around us. What once protected us gradually becomes the very thing that traps us. The truth is, armor protects us, but it also isolates us. It keeps out harm, yes, but it also keeps out love. It blocks the pain, but it also blocks the joy. When we wall off the parts of ourselves that feel fragile, we unintentionally wall off the parts that feel alive. Emotional isolation doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like saying, "I'm fine," when you're not. Sometimes it looks like avoiding deep conversations because they feel too risky. Sometimes it looks like pushing people away the moment they get close enough to see who you truly are. And sometimes it looks like pretending you don't care, when in reality, you care more deeply than anyone knows. Armor asks us to survive, not thrive, and survival mode might be necessary during moments of crisis, but it cannot sustain a fulfilling life. When we operate from armor, we miss out on connection, the very thing we are wired for as human beings. Connection requires openness, trust, and presence. You cannot form meaningful bonds while behind emotional barricades. People cannot love a version of you that refuses to be seen. They cannot support you if you never let them know you're struggling. They cannot understand you if all they ever see is the mask you wear. What makes this even more challenging is that armor feels safe. Removing it feels terrifying. The fear is real. If I lower guard, I might get hurt again. And yes, opening up carries risk, but so does staying closed. When you keep everyone at arm's length, you pay a price. Loneliness, numbness, disconnection from yourself and others. Your relationships become shallow, your emotions become muted, and your life becomes smaller than it was meant to be. The paradox is that while armor shields you from pain, vulnerability is what allows you to heal. When you take off the armor piece by piece, you begin to breathe again. You begin to feel again. You make space for trust, intimacy, belonging, and understanding. Those things don't flourish in guarded hearts. They grow in the open spaces where authenticity lives. Choosing to loosen your armor is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of wisdom. It means you've learned that life isn't meant to be lived behind barriers, that connection is worth the risk, and that protecting yourself should never come at the cost of losing yourself. Authentic connection is built on a foundation that cannot be faked, polished, or performed. It requires honesty, real unfiltered honesty. Not the kind that simply avoids lying, but the deeper kind that allows you to be seen as you truly are. Honesty is the bridge between two human hearts. Without it, relationships become surface-level conversations held behind invisible walls. With it, relationships gain depth, trust, and meaning. When you speak your truth, you create space for someone else to speak theirs, and that is where connection truly begins. We sometimes fear honesty because we believe it will push people away. We worry that if we express our real feelings, reveal our insecurities, or admit our mistakes, others might judge us or pull back. But the irony is that people can't connect with the version of us we pretend to be. They can only connect with who we are. Pretending may keep things peaceful, but it will never make them meaningful. When you hide parts of your truth, you also hide the parts of you that are capable of being loved. Honesty is not about oversharing or pouring out your entire life story to everyone you meet. It's about aligning what you feel with what you express. It's about choosing not to lie to yourself first. Authentic connection requires the courage to say, "This is what I'm experiencing. This is what I need," even when your voice trembles. It requires the willingness to let someone understand your inner world rather than guessing or making assumptions. Honesty builds clarity, and clarity builds trust. Without trust, connection cannot breathe. There is a certain relief that comes with honesty, lifting of the emotional weight we carry when we hold things in. When you finally speak what you've been afraid to express, you give the relationship a chance to grow in the right direction. Sometimes honesty strengthens the bond. Sometimes it reveals that a relationship cannot hold the truth you need to share. But either way, honesty sets you free. It allows you to stop performing and start relating. In authentic connection, honesty works both ways. It means you get to show up truthfully, but it also means you must be willing to receive truth from others. You cannot demand honesty while hiding behind your own walls. And you cannot expect someone to be real with you if you respond with defensiveness, blame, or judgment. Creating a space for truth requires compassion and curiosity. It requires listening without needing to fix or control. When someone trusts you with their honesty, they are offering a piece of themselves. That is a privilege. The most meaningful relationships you will ever have be the ones where honesty feels safe. Where you don't have to guess what someone means, and they don't have to guess what you feel. Where truth is not a threat, but a pathway to deeper understanding. Authentic connection is not built on perfection. It's built on the courage to show up truthfully again and again. When honesty becomes the language of your relationships, connection becomes effortless. It becomes real. And real connection is what the human heart longs for the most. Discomfort is one of life's greatest teachers, even though most of us spend years trying to avoid it. We gravitate toward what feels familiar, predictable, and safe, but comfort gives us the illusion of control. But the truth is simple and universal. Nothing meaningful grows in comfort. The moments that shape our lives, expand our understanding, and strengthen our character almost always begin with discomfort. Growth is born in the spaces where we feel uncertain, challenged, stretched, or exposed. It is in these uncomfortable moments that we discover who we really are. Discomfort shows up in many forms. Trying something new, telling the truth, ending habits that no longer serve us, setting boundaries, facing rejection, stepping into unfamiliar territory, or confronting our own fears. Each of these experiences carries emotional friction, the uneasy feeling that tells us we're stepping outside the lines we've drawn around ourselves. But that friction is not a sign to retreat. It's a sign that you are evolving. Think of every skill you've ever learned, every fear you've ever overcome, every step forward you've ever taken. It all began with a moment of not knowing, not being ready, or not feeling confident, yet you grew anyway. The discomfort we often avoid is the exact discomfort we need. When we resist difficult conversations, our relationships stay stuck. When we avoid risks, our dreams stay dormant. When we escape from vulnerability, we rob ourselves of connection. The human mind naturally seeks ease, but the human spirit thrives on challenge. That unsettled feeling is not your enemy. It's your invitation. It's life whispering, "There is more for you than where you are now." Growth asks us to stretch beyond who we were yesterday, and stretching is uncomfortable by design. Muscles grow by tearing and rebuilding. The same is true for emotional and spiritual strength. Every time you face something difficult, you increase your capacity. You become more resilient, more self-aware, more confident in your ability to handle life. You stop shrinking yourself to fit old patterns and start expanding into the person you're meant to be. The beauty of discomfort is that it reveals what you care about. You don't feel nervous, challenged, or exposed in situations that don't matter. Discomfort points toward your purpose, your desires, your boundaries, and your longing for more. It helps you see the gap between where you are and where you want to be. And acknowledging that gap is the first step toward closing it. When you embrace discomfort, instead of resisting it, you begin to see it as a necessary part of transformation. You understand that growth rarely feels good in the moment, but always feels worth it afterward. You stop interpreting discomfort as a danger sign and start interpreting as progress. You learn to breathe through the uncertainty, trust the process, and stand tall in moments that once made you want to run. Discomfort is not the obstacle, it is the path. Every step you take through it strengthens you, shapes you, and prepares you for the life you truly want to live. When you stop avoiding what challenges you, you unlock the version of yourself that only growth can reveal. Imperfection is something we're taught to fear from a young age. We learn to equate mistakes with failure, flaws with inadequacy, and vulnerability with weakness. We try to polish ourselves into an image we think the world will accept, one that looks strong, composed, and untouched by struggle. But in chasing perfection, we disconnect from the most authentic parts of ourselves. The truth is, simple imperfection is not a flaw in our humanity. It is our humanity. It is what makes us relatable, real, and capable of genuine connection. Every human being carries cracks, contradictions, and unfinished stories. We all stumble, doubt, break, heal, and begin again. When we try to hide our imperfections, we don't become more lovable. We become less accessible. People don't bond over perfection. They bond over shared struggle. They bond over truth. When you allow others to see your perfections, you give them permission to be human too. You create space for empathy, comparison, understanding instead of judgment. Imperfection also teaches us humility. It reminds us that no matter how much we achieve, how much we learn, or how strong we become, we are still evolving. There is always more to discover, more to grow into, more to understand about ourselves and others. Instead of striving for an impossible standard, embracing imperfection allows us to appreciate progress, effort, and authenticity. It shifts our focus from looking flawless to being real. When you stop chasing perfection, you begin to see the beauty in your own resilience. Each flaw carries a lesson. Each mistake carries wisdom. Each failure carries a chance to rise. Perfect lives don't teach us anything, but imperfect journeys shape our character, our compassion, and our courage. The cracks in us are where our light gets in and where it shines out to others. Imperfection also keeps us grounded. It keeps us open to growth, willing to try again, and able to show grace to ourselves and the people around us. When we cling to perfectionism, we become harsh critics of both ourselves and others, constantly analyzing, comparing, and self-correcting. But when we accept our imperfections, we develop patience, kindness, and forgiveness. We begin to understand that life is not meant to be flawless, it's meant to be lived. What makes imperfection so powerful is that it allows us to belong, not perform, not compete, not impress, belong. To show up in our truth, not in our highlight reel. To be accepted as we are, not as we pretend to be. When we embrace our humanity, we strengthen our connection to others and deepen our connection to ourselves. The world does not need perfect people. It needs honest people, compassionate people, people who show up despite their fears, who love despite their flaws, who try again despite their past. Your imperfections are not evidence that you are unworthy. They are evidence that you are alive, learning, and courageously being human. Choosing vulnerability is choosing to live with your whole heart, not just the parts that feel safe, polished, or socially acceptable. It is choosing to step into life fully instead of watching from behind emotional walls. Vulnerability asks you to show up without guarantees, to express your truth even when you fear judgment, and to open yourself to connection even when past experiences have taught you to guard your heart. It is not easy. It is not comfort. It is the path to a life that feels real, meaningful, and aligned with who you truly are. A wholehearted life is not built on perfection or certainty. It is built on authenticity. Vulnerability is the doorway to that authenticity. When you choose vulnerability, you stop performing and start participating. You stop hiding your feelings and start honoring them. You stop waiting for perfect conditions and start taking courageous steps, even when you're scared. Wholehearted living requires emotional presence, and vulnerability is the practice that keeps you present with your emotions, your relationships, your dreams, and your values. Choosing vulnerability means choosing connection. It means allowing people to know you, not the carefully curated version you've learned to present. When you let others see your fears, your hopes, your flaws, and your desires, you invite genuine intimacy. You create relationships rooted in truth rather than pretense. Wholehearted living thrives on these deep, honest connections. The kind that can weather storms, heal wounds, and remind you that you don't have to navigate life alone. But vulnerability is not just about relationships. It's also about how you show up for yourself. It means acknowledging your emotions instead of suppressing them. It means being honest about what you want instead of settling for what feels safe. It means listening to your inner voice even when others may not understand. Vulnerability gives you permission to honor your own experience. A wholehearted life is one where you treat yourself with the same compassion, curiosity, and grace that you offer to the people you love. What makes vulnerability transformative is that it allows your life to expand. When you avoid vulnerability, your world becomes small. You stop taking risks, avoid difficult conversations, and shrink away from opportunities that require you to step into uncertainty. But when you choose vulnerability, you begin to say yes to growth. You allow yourself to dream bigger, love deeper, and live bolder. You start embracing experiences that shape you rather than avoiding ones that scare you. The truth is, vulnerability will never be comfortable, but comfort was never the goal. The goal is fullness, aliveness, connection, meaning. Without vulnerability, these things cannot take root. Vulnerability opens your heart to joy just as much as it opens it to pain. A wholehearted life embraces both. The beauty and the struggles and the failures, the clarity and the confusion. Choosing vulnerability is ultimately choosing to live honestly and bravely. It is choosing to show up for your life with open hands and an open heart. And when you live that way, you don't just exist, you expand, you evolve, and you become the most authentic version of yourself. That is the essence of living wholeheartedly.